Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. To some of you, out to the rest of you, hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. Shannon Sharp. Um, I think Keith Sweat, if I'm not mistaken. The names are starting to run together now. So many are being sued for struggle-snuggle decades ago that in all honesty, the next time someone says to me, hey, listen, you need to cam up, why don't you give us your name? Why don't you do all that? Then my answer becomes, you're trying to set me up. I don't care who says to do that. I really don't give a rat's behind who says to do that. If you say to me to do this, you were trying to set me up. Because now it's happening across the board. I mean, every time we look up, somebody else now is being sued, not even charged, but sued. The struggle-snuggles from decades ago that they may or may not have done. And you really know that they're not allowed to sit up and say, no, I didn't do it. So what does that leave? Well, that pretty much leaves this. They need to find some way to prove that they didn't do it, even though they technically and under the law wouldn't have to prove that. See, one of the things about lawsuits is that lawsuits can have you paying for crimes that you didn't commit because the burden of proof is different in civil courts on average. Now, a state can determine what it's going to take to prove something in a civil court, but the issue is that a preponderance of evidence is what it takes. And so all it would really require is maybe some more testimony in order to prove that you did something for which you were civilly liable, not criminal. In criminal courts, you must be proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, some say beyond a shadow of a doubt, but it's not that. It's beyond a reasonable doubt. If the doubt is not reasonable, then it's still, you're proven guilty. But if there's a reasonable doubt, then you got grounds to appeal if you wind up convicted, in fact. So this, and then on top of that, Tory Lanez, because he had a gun when he shouldn't have had one, although he didn't use it based on the bodyguard now, Tory Lanez was still thrown under the bus, not only by the criminal, but by the victim of the criminal, the actual shooter. Now, I've heard one version of the story in which the bodyguard came out after the stabbing and said, I can't have this on my conscience. And another version in which he came out and said this, and then Tory got stabbed. But in any case, what I come to realize is that no matter how you look at it, Tory's paying, and he's paying dearly. And he didn't have to even pull the trigger. Now, was he supposed to be in possession of a gun? No. What that means is that he gets sentenced for the possession of the weapon only. And that's if you can prove that it was his gun, not somebody else's. But what is he doing behind bars for the discharge and the use of a weapon he wasn't supposed to have as a convicted felon? That raises that question. So he is serving time for the shooting, and the whole time it turns out that he just had a gun. And that's if you can prove it's his. He probably said, yeah, I owned the weapon, I just didn't use it. That's probably what the case was. But in any case, what we're dealing with here is clear knowledge and understanding, gentlemen, that if you are black, you are going to be accused of things you did not do. And I know this about just being an unattractive male, and then even being an attractive male in some other context. I know that I'm going to be blamed for things I did not do. And so to sit up and tell me that I should cam up and show myself is pretty much a confession that what you want to do is set my black behind up. You want to take my high yellow behind and have me thrown on somebody's cell block, or lose a lawsuit I can't afford for money that I don't have. But either way, that's what you want. You want me punished for a crime I didn't commit and could not afford to commit and can't get away with even being near someone else who commits. You want me to do something of that nature, because right now, what is it that they're coming out and they're all saying? It's always the same. It's not robbery. It's not theft. It's not breach of privacy. It's none of these things. It's always, he pinned me down and he took it. Struggle snuggle. And they're going off of the idea that you can withdraw consent later on. And as the Reverend Brother Pastor Deacon Dr. Hurricane Edward Allen Anderson of the New Greater Zion Valley, Precious Lamb, oh Lord, hold my mule while I shout, Golden Monument, Mountain of Hope, Faith Tabernacle of We Don't Tolerate No Misandry off of these O's Incorporated has said they want to turn game into a crime, a struggle snuggle. Just game. That's enough. You already know foot to walk that means. Game now is a crime. Game now is the same thing as struggle snuggle. You rizzed her, so to speak. You convinced her. You dazzled her, which is what everyone says that a real man would and should do anyway. And because you were able to do that, Ninja, you ain't fit. And you need to go in and do some time. Or if they can't prove it enough to get you to do some time, then you need to pay dearly. Even though you didn't, to take your pick, you didn't do it. Even with all of that. So you really kind of can't win. I shouldn't even say kind of. You can't win. There's nothing you could do. You can't protect yourself. You can't. You're not supposed to say you didn't do it. That's bad. Who are you talking to if you say you didn't do it? They're not playing with you. Don't do that. You know, denial of guilt in the eyes of some of these women is another crime in and of itself. And I knew there was some kind of phenomena to this. I didn't understand fully how bad it got until there was a lady that liked me, and I didn't want her like that, but I did, I liked her as a friend. I friend zoned her. But I told her how naive I had been. I was actually trying to have her like decide on her own that I wasn't that dude. And I told her how naive I used to be when I was younger, how little I knew about women. Because, women don't want guys that don't know about them already. They don't want a man they got to teach anything. So I went ahead and showed myself as the guy I was, the guy you got to teach. And I said, yeah, I was naive. I didn't believe that anybody ever ran any trains in real life until I was out of college. And that was true. That was when some dudes I knew ran a train in real life. And when they ran this train on her, one of the dudes was 14. She could have got charges for that. She could have, technically under the law. I didn't do it. I didn't participate. And even after me telling her about this naivety of mine, she had the nerve later to say something about how we gang struggle snuggled this girl. Even though I walked in and found that it was going on and it was consensual. Oh, I'm sure y'all like Heather Roses and the music and all that. And I was like, well, like I said, I walked in. No, they didn't have. Did they have music playing? I don't know actually, but if they did, it wasn't loud. The lights were low. I'm pretty sure I couldn't see any roses. Even though the lights were dim, my eyes would work in the dark pretty well at that, at that age. So I was like, no, you know what? They didn't have that. That's true. But I mean, you just sat up here and said, that we gang struggle snuggled, even though nobody would do something that damn dumb. When I say nobody, I mean nobody I knew for miles around. And you see, I knew how dumb, we all knew how dumb that was to do because the summer after my freshman year, which was 3 years before the summer that this happened, I went back to visit for about a month or so in my hometown. I remember going, and a bunch of dudes, a bunch of my partners had already dug out some little white gal. And then they found out later on that she was underage and she was going to the cops, but she was going to try to get the names. She didn't know all the names. Now, she was sitting up here willing to say something like this at that age. So she was pretty much going to say it wasn't statutory struggle snuggle. It was I knew that was going to come next because she was in some kind of trouble unless she was forced. So she was going to, I wasn't even in town at the time. So I had a perfect alibi. But I still was hanging around them when they were sitting up talking and planning about how they were going to defend themselves. And most of the dudes that were talking and planning this were nearby, but they didn't participate. And they were still sitting up talking and planning because you had a little white girl talking about putting this type of charge on all of these black boys who were now legally adults because they were over 18. Now, this is where it got messed up. There was one guy that wouldn't let anybody else finish talking. Like he kept interrupting and wouldn't let them finish talking no matter what. That kind of messed things up. And I eventually just had to leave the discussion. I couldn't even contribute with a little bit I could have thought of. But to make a long, and here's the other thing too. This is the kicker. Nobody, even the ones involved, none of them knew her age at the time. Not one. Because they met her where she wasn't supposed to be. Nothing came of it. But I want you guys to understand that when I sit up here, for years I've sat up and I have not cammed up and I have not put my name out there, neither my old nor my new. When I've not put any of them out there, I'm not about to do that. I know better. I ain't that stupid. And one of the reasons is because I done already had cyber vigilantes that are white supremacists talking about they gonna get me thrown away for 30 years and if I didn't do anything to get thrown away for 30 years, then what the fuck are they talking about? One of them said, we can get you thrown away for 3. And I was like, wait, really? You probably could. Depends on what you can get somebody to say in court that I did. But you'd have to get someone to lie in court. That's the issue here. You got to get somebody to lie in court. What do you have? What is somebody willing to sit up here and say? And how they going to make it even plausible? You know what? I ain't even about to find out. They were threatening this. They were like, oh, we can already get you on that, but we're going to get you for 30. We're going to get you thrown in for 30. And I knew they weren't playing because folk around me started to get picked up. And now we're understanding that it is not only the white folk that love to sit up here and blame black folk for stuff they didn't do. We also got sistren, so-called, that love to sit up and blame bros for stuff that bros didn't do. But you ain't no man if you sit up and say you didn't do it, because, that's cowardly. Even if you didn't do it, saying you didn't do it is cowardly. So how dare you, Ninja, get up there and say you did it? You even got a white woman talking about men in general who didn't do anything illegal need to sit up there and take a false accusation for the team to make up for what the hell other guys got away with. An innocent man needs to get up on the cross and be crucified like Jesus, that they think was on the cross, for the sins of the innocent. And then when we sit up and say, well, you today's white folk that are enjoying the benefits of bondage and Jim Crow and redlining and segregation and the legacy of slavery, just need to give up the benefits. We're not saying that you need to be nailed to the cross, owned, put out in them fields and worked and forced to pick cotton. We're just saying you need to give them benefits up. If it means you start off poor again, not our damn problem. We didn't do this stuff. Then all of a sudden, you're an entitled N-word, and you see how it goes. But then you got some bros here in not the manosphere, but they're in the manosphere spaces, want to sit up and say, cam up, cam up. What's going to happen the day that Myron Gaines gets hit with something like that? What defense is he going to have? The fact that he worked in law enforcement may or may not help him. But them white boys that he thinks are so right about race and everything else are not going to come to his defense. They're probably going to be like, look, I really don't know, Myron. I mean, you're kind of dark. You might have done it. How do I know? Oh, come on. I've been a good darky. I worked in law enforcement. I was you guys' friends growing up. I used the N-word more than you guys did, talking about these lazy American N-words. And now you want to say I'm one of them? Well, we didn't say you're one of them. But this lady here says that you struggle-snuggled her and you pinned her down, or that you tricked her and deceived her, whatever. Okay, so when he goes through that, you and I can tell that once he is accused, it's his behind. He's either going to take that lawsuit or he's going to take them charges, whichever one these women bring. Probably a lawsuit. And he done ducked and dodged accountability when it was applied to him. He's sitting up here telling men you need to fornicate and get a body count of up to 50 before you decide to get married. Then he'll tell women, well, if you want to get married, you shouldn't have a high body count. How is that supposed to work? He Muslim. He's already got the guidance and the set of, well, he said he was. He already got the guidance and the set of instructions, but he said, well, we don't deal with the shady parts. Ain't no shady parts. A non-Muslim might think that there's some shady parts. We don't expect no different. How you going to say you Muslim and then talk about some shady parts of Islam? Ain't no shady parts. That ain't how this works. But we know that no amount of selling out and cooning from him is going to change a further-mucking thing once he gets sued. And you want me, who's sitting up here ticking off a bunch of people because, and I'm not even because of anything wrong I'm doing to people, but because of that to which I'm inviting them, and you want me to sit up here and cam up and give name. I'm not those of you in the audience per se, but there are those that want to sit up and say, no, first it was Black Card need to show his face, then it was Black Mind need to show his face, now it's going to be Jet Black needs to show his face. No names, no faces. I'm not doing that. And I'm ready to sue anybody that reveals the old or the new name. Even if we were cool before. I'm ready for that. Whether they're here or back there in the States. I'm not saying I'm rich, but I've already discussed how to go about it with attorneys. And one of them didn't charge me the retainer fee. The one here didn't even charge a retainer fee. I paid something, but he didn't charge it. I had to go to his secretary later and be like, look, take something out, man. Look, here's the card. Just let me pay half of it. I had to do something, but that's the thing. It's not even because I'm guilty, but I understand when you are simply taking the wrong platform. Because I don't believe that wives who have agreed to marry husbands have by default some right to just say no and keep their legs closed. Now, there are valid reasons, but I'm not going to go over what they are, because if I sat up and told a bunch of non-Muslim women or even weak Muslim women what these valid reasons are, they'll always have them. If they really do have them, they already know that these are valid excuses. But I'm not going to sit up and tell them what it is. And I'm not even telling the husbands pin them down and take it. What I'm saying is, what I'm saying to the husbands is, she does that, you stop taking care of her and you leave her. Cut it all off and you bounce on her. You tell her in 90 days, you're going to be free to marry somebody else. What? You heard me. And since it's because you kept them legs closed when I came to you, I'm not giving you a damn thing for the last 90 days. You can't do that. Well, if you want me to forgive you for saying no, you forgive me for taking care, you forgive me of what I'm supposed to otherwise give for them 90 days. Give up those rights because I had to give up one. I'm going on and marrying somebody else. That's what you do. And that's one of the reasons I say you cannot sit up here and try to start families in jurisdictions in which polygyny is illegal. If it is legal, and not everybody does it, but it's legal and it does not require the first or second or third wife's permission and consent, great, fine, dandy, do that. But if it is illegal, if it is against the law, the family structure is over. It is gone. It's already done for. I found out that's one of the problems going on in Malaysia right now. I mean, there is a backdoor way to get a second marriage legalized that does exist, but a lot of guys not all of them know about it. And it does involve some travel and some money. But, that's part of the thing. So, I mean, I don't see a very strong family structure being able to maintain itself in Malaysia. I don't know what's going to happen in Indonesia. I bet you they're not going to have this problem in Brunei. I bet you they won't. You know why? Because that guy don't play around. I bet you they won't. I don't think he would allow something like that where he lives. And hey, look, cool. I bet you that family structure is stable. People are talking about we got to get rid of the graphic display of intercourse. You get what I'm talking about. It's a 4-letter word, starts with a P, and it's not a bad word, but people don't want to say it on YouTube. Well, you know what? You're not going to get rid of the demand for it until marriage is easy for young men, even when they don't have money. And I mean easy for young men who don't have money, even to women that are attractive. They ain't got to be all bombshells, but they got to be at least cute enough for these young cats. And I'm saying this as a father of daughters that I love very much. I don't like the idea of them going through poverty, but ain't nobody immune to that. That's one thing that Allah is ready to test anybody with, disbeliever or believer, in whatever you claim. Most of the world's poor. It's a default. And he's ready to sit up there and assign that to many people. Some permanently, some temporarily. But I mean, that's what he's going to do. Beauty does not entitle a woman to not ever have to deal with poverty. This is a fallacious notion that many women are giving to other women. You're not going to get rid of the demand for corn, until you make marriage easy. And that's something that not only the legal system will have to do, but the dads are going to have to get out of the way of. Well, you don't have much. Nigga, what does your daughter have? Well, she's a daughter. Yeah, I get that. So my dad's wealth don't count for what I got, which is fine, but your wealth counts for what she's entitled to get from me. Make that make sense. Well, she'll have to go down in lifestyle. Nigga, so will I. You just think that because sex happens in a marriage that all of a sudden everything else in my lifestyle is going to be better. Or maybe you think I won't care about that stuff. Maybe I won't. So damn what? Are you trying to find for her a good husband? Or are you just trying to find for her somebody that can guarantee never seeing a day of poverty? And that man doesn't exist even if he's rich. Because he can't guarantee God won't afflict him with it just to test your daughter if that's your biggest fear. If you think that poverty is going to be a threat to your daughter's faith, whatever her faith is, even though I only endorse one, if you think it's going to be a threat to her faith, do you think God wants her faith only because she wasn't poor? He may throw him into it just to throw her into it, just to say, okay, look, you're going to get rid of this demon in you if you want me to count your faith worth a damn. I mean, not God would say it that way, but the point is that he may simply make that decision that in order for the faith to count at all, it must be present even during poverty. If that can happen to men, it can happen to women. I say stuff like this. I advocate this. The fact that I advocate the solution I advocate for is already enough. We get persecuted. There is a religious persecution that is targeted at Muslims of various races, and then there's a persecution that is targeted at black folks, and then there's a persecution that is targeted at black men, and then there's the persecution that is targeted at black men that are heterosexual, and then you throw Muslim on top of that. Heterosexual, Muslim, black, and male, and you think I would be wise to sit up here and throw my name and face out there. And I done already left the USA. You think that that's a wise thing? People get picked up and charged and even convicted for being unpopular all the time. Tory Lanez, anybody? R. Kelly? Bill Cosby became unpopular. He was convicted. It wasn't for a whole lot. It wasn't for everything they said, but he was convicted for touching one lady's chest who barely got one, to be honest. I'm not even saying that to be derogatory to her. But it's just he was convicted for touching something he would have to look to find. When he has all these other titties that are much bigger than hers that he could touch without even looking for them. He got convicted for touching hers, got put in jail, and began to lose his damn mind. He was popular, then he was unpopular. And you want me to, I'm not nothing like him, but the point is, just let me become unpopular. See, I didn't mourn too much when it was Captain Samuel's turn to stand in front of the throne of God. One of the reasons is because somebody was going to sit up and somebody was going to try to do something. If he had lived this long, somebody would have come forward and made up some lie about him snuggling them, and then they would have sued him. And they probably would have sued him for everything he had, just to put it back on the street. Women admitted that they were doing roots on him. And some of them admitted to that. Now, none of them said I was praying for him to die. None said that. But they admitted some have admitted that others were doing roots on him. Well, guess what? Let's say that didn't work. Could have been something else. And that is problematic. As it is, one of the reasons I ducked too much attention from Shira 7 for a while was because, you know what? She admitted she does that stuff. And when they do something and they send things after you, those things do go. Now, they may or may not succeed in what they're trying to do, but they do come after you. And you can't see them. You don't know when they're at your door. You don't know when they've entered where you live. But they see you and they see me. I know. I grew up on the Gulf Coast. People used to do it and it would work. And yes, it worked more on people who cared nothing about any kind of faith at all. And it worked less on people who cared at least enough to repent for when they did wrong and to regularly stay in touch with God. Even if it is in a way that I would not now endorse, it worked less on them. I know a guy he had something like that put on him. A voodoo yen saw him and said, look, somebody did this to you. Listen, didn't charge him nothing. So this is what somebody did to you, and this is how she did it. And she was right. A lady did do this to him. And he said, well, what do I do? Because it's working. And she said, you ain't going to be able to just get rid of it, but you can transfer it. You could transfer it to somebody that prays a lot, or somebody else, even somebody else is praying for them. You could do that. He had a few girlfriends, but he had one girlfriend whose grandma was always praying for her. So he transferred it to her. Nothing happened to her. Can you imagine that? I've seen it. And I know exactly what it is and who and whose employed they are when they do these things. And some of y'all want me to sit up here, put my name and put my face on. I mean, some not in the regular audience, but there've been some that have done that. I don't even leave those comments up. I don't have to. I'm allowed to take comments down for stuff like that. Some of y'all will be like, hey, man, why don't you go ahead and do this or give us your 20 right quick. And what is it they're looking for? They want to be able to find out where I work so they can call the HR and say, y'all don't want this dude. And I'm saying, no, I'm not doing that. You ain't finna call my job and say nothing like that. I'm doing my job. They may or may not listen, but it ain't got nothing to do with that. I do my job when I'm there. If I record at work, it's in between my class times or the students didn't show up and I don't have to be there no more. That's if I record at work. I generally don't. But some people are just looking for reasons. And here's the thing about poverty. That is one of the weapons of Shaitan. Impoverishment of those who were not poor before, and poverty maintained for those who were. That's one of their weapons. I've already been through that test. I don't need to go through it again. I'm not going to do any better, maybe worse, but damn sure not no better the second time than what I did the first time. It's poverty. I've done the work it takes to get the F out of it. Been through the trauma it takes to get the F out of it. I don't need to go through that again. And that's part of why it is the minute I find out that my privacy has been violated, the minute I find that out, once I can narrow it down to someone, they're going to pay. I wouldn't even wait. I would say to H, if they called me in and they said, listen, we got a phone call, and if this continues, we're going to let you go. I'd say, okay, well, if you're going to let me go, then here's what I'm going to say to you to do. I can't tell you that they are or not going to call again. But here's the thing. Do not take another phone call without at least asking them who the heck they are. Take something down, a number, something, so that I can identify them later, because they're going to have to pay. If you do that, I won't sue you. And that's what I have to do. Nobody here wants to be sued, just like nobody in the States does. And I don't want to sue them here. But if that's what it takes, so what? So guess what? You do something like that. If they don't want to be sued, they're going to have to turn around and ask you or take a number or something. And they got caller ID over here. You call, number's going to show up. And as soon as that happens, I'm going for that. When it comes to a lawsuit, they're going to have to find out certain bits of information and turn around and get that back to my attorney. They don't play with me. I'm not doing this to y'all. I'm not trying to ruin anybody's income per se. What I'm trying to do is tell you guys the evasive measures you need to take to protect the family structure wherever you decide to have one, and how to avoid going where you can't maintain a family structure. And I think that what I'll do is on my Buy Me a Coffee channel, I'll go ahead and tell you all what these guys have been telling me lately, because on my ride to the bus station to go see my wife, and then on my ride from the bus station back here, back home where I am now, from visiting my wife, I've had 2 Uber drivers 2 days in a row tell me some information about what's going on. You want to know what that is? Go ahead and subscribe to Buy Me a Coffee. I'll be nice. I'll make it available to business and first class for a while. Then I'm going to make it available only for the first class moving forward into perpetuity. This makes everything fair to everybody. I hope this helps. But yeah, I'm going to say to many of you out here that don't cam up, the Geek Underground, as an example. BGS. I think Don Calypso does not cam up. Young Grizzly, I believe you don't. No, I think you may have, actually. I can't remember. But to those of you that have any sort of channel and you don't cam up and you don't put your name out there, God damn it, don't ever start doing it. I don't care who says it. And Dennis Sperling loves to sit up and say, you ain't coming up on my panel unless you cam up. It's his channel. He can do that if he wants to. But I'm telling you, if that's the case, just stay in the chat. If there's something you want to say, I'm using him as an example. If anybody has any mother cuss word thing to say about you need to cam up before you can go on the panel, stay in the chat. Because even if there's someone you would otherwise trust, that doesn't mean they cannot be used by sources that are untrustworthy. No, we bold, we put our names, we put our faces. Everybody ain't an attorney. I mean, I've retained some. I've retained one here. Ready to retain one stateside, but everybody ain't an attorney. I don't know what the hell this is that some people have in their head. Some say, well, you must not believe if you ain't willing to sacrifice nothing for it. I done already made the sacrifices. I didn't start preaching this until I'd already made plenty of sacrifices. Before I even said now on this channel what it is that I've been saying. Already made sacrifices. My kids have too. So no, we're not going for this. Maintain your privacy. It is not your job to make yourself an easy target for people that are false and wrong. Never was. There was no point where it was. I hope this helps. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Muhammad, for coming through on the Cash App twice. And I mean it from the bottom of my black heart and from the depths of my black mind. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. That was generous. And thank you to everybody else that came through on the Cash App within the last month. Y'all know who you are. And I advise you all to go to the Jet Black Air Lounge. The link to which is in the description. It's the second link. It's the first one coming up after the Cash App link. I know. Yeah, my Cash App is in the descriptions, but the next one is the Jet Black Air Lounge. Pick a level, business or first class. I advise you to go there because I'm putting more information on there. And I got a trip coming up soon, inshallah. And that's where you want to be. If you would like to know, you'd like to be in that Jet Black Air Lounge. If you want to know where I'm going and what it's like and what I find, good and bad. Thank you for listening. As always, black heart, black mind, black out, assalamu alaikum, black heterosexual, non-select male power because they don't like it. Black patriarch until extinction of judgment day. And thank you for flying with us again here on Jet Black Air, where the phrase jet black is also a verb. Keep jetting black with us till the wings and the wheels fall off. Gender, justice, forever.